Please join me in welcoming the next two speakers. Rear Admiral Scott Dillon is the commander of the Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division. NOCWD is responsible for research, development, acquisition support, test and evaluation, and in-service engineering for the total weapons systems. Prior to assuming his current position in April 2018, Rear Admiral Dillon served as the commander of the Naval Safety Center in Norfolk, Virginia. Joining Rear Admiral Dillon is NOCWD Executive Director Joan Johnson. Ms. Johnson entered the Senior Executive Service in 2008. She assumed her current position in January 2016 and currently directs a civilian workforce of more than 6,000 professionals. Before Admiral Dillon will begin his remarks, please enjoy this video from NOCWD.
I confess, I had not yet watched that video myself, although I've seen many of the clips that are included in the video over the years, so I was kind of hanging out backstage and watching it. That's a pretty good video. This is an exciting place to work. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you in this forum. It's an exciting time to be at China Lake. There's a lot going on, and that's no surprise to anybody, especially given all the remarks that were made by all the speakers who you heard from earlier today. Resources are starting to flow quickly to the base and to NOCWD at China Lake. They're flowing quickly as a result of the earthquake recovery. That's no surprise based on any of the remarks that have been made earlier here today. But resources are also flowing to NOCWD just as a consequence of our ongoing ability to deliver products such as the products that you saw depicted in the video that we just played. China Lake is a one-of-a-kind facility as far as the Department of Defense and the Navy is concerned. Our partnership with the Ridgecrest community is unlike anything that exists anywhere else that I've been in the country. And I've been stationed in a lot of places across the country during my time in the Navy, but this is a place where the entire Department of Defense, the entire enterprise comes to get the sort of work done that can only be done here. And as a consequence of that fact, the future is very bright for China Lake and for Ridgecrest and for the Indian Wells Valley, at least in my assessment. Immediately after I wrap up my fairly brief opening remarks, because I want to make sure I allow time for the triad of speakers here to provide you with information on a variety of different things that are happening on base. Immediately after I finish, our executive director, Ms. Johnson, is going to come up with some additional details on some of the topics I'm about to touch on. I will tell you that she and I, in the last month, have spent some time on base in a series of 3 town halls where we put out information to our 6,000 strong workforce about NOCWD's accomplishments in the course of the last year. And we did not spend a whole lot of time talking about earthquake or earthquake recovery. We touched on the topic because there's a great deal of activity that's about to begin, and that's of interest to the workforce. But we spent the majority of our time during these town hall meetings with our workforce talking about the organization's accomplishments during the last year. And that's particularly interesting. You work in a huge number of different areas. A number of different areas that are generally sort of not extremely well known by people who have not had a lot of direct exposure in the course of their career to the military weapons acquisition process, has continued to occur in parallel with the earthquake recovery efforts. And that's a really important point because it does go to the confidence that the entire Department of Defense has in the basic research and development that scientists and engineers who work on base at NOCWD do, in their ability to take these developmental technologies and then transition them into programs of record to test the systems that we have prototyped, to deliver the systems that these scientists and engineers have built to the fleet customer and to sustain the systems once they're out in the fleet. The number of different types of systems that we do this work for is very far-ranging. We do it for weapon systems, warheads, propulsion systems, electronic warfare systems, avionics systems that go on aircraft. The list is really quite extensive, and it goes to the type and the number and the caliber of people who are coming to Ridgecrest in order to work on these programs and are coming to Ridgecrest year after year in order to do just that. I spent a little bit of time yesterday afternoon at a meal and farewell. It's really a welcoming party that we do for our new employees. We do this about once a month on base, and I had the opportunity to speak to, yesterday it was about 30, usually it's anywhere between 20 and 40 new scientists, new engineers who have recently been hired by colleges, universities, all across Southern California, Arizona, Utah, Nevada. We draw people from the East Coast as well. But these new hires are constantly coming into the area because they're excited about the sort of work we do here, and that's part of the reason that I think it's such an exciting time to be here. I think it's significant that that sort of work, that sort of hiring continues despite the earthquakes, or more accurately, in parallel with the earthquake recovery efforts that have been underway. I think it's a testament to the flexibility, the innovation of the workforce, the experience of the workforce, but it is also reflective of the fact that we don't often talk about, which is that though there were somewhere around 100 or so buildings on base that were severely damaged as a result of the earthquake and are going to be the focus of a years-long reconstruction effort that we're fortunate to have appropriated money for, it's worth occasionally reflecting on the fact that there were, on the order of round numbers, 1,500 facilities that were not impacted, and that gave us the ability to adjust our work and to continue to deliver on behalf of the fleet despite the fact that we're simultaneously rebuilding. So yes, the earthquake reconstruction funds provide us with an opportunity to rebuild better than we've ever been before, but we are by no means down and out right now. We're continuing to deliver at least the rate that we have delivered in previous years on a huge number of important projects for a wide range of customers, hundreds and hundreds of customers, and aviation program executive officers, other branches of the service, and pretty much anyone who you can think of across the DoD who has a need for the unique sort of engineering expertise that resides here at China Lake, and that, even more than the earthquake recovery funding that has been appropriated, is the reason that I believe the future is so bright. I am not going to take up too much more time with my opening remarks. I would like to talk just for a couple of more minutes about two things that come to mind when I think about the earthquakes and what I think we learned from the earthquakes. And I think, number one, we learned, or at least the entire defense enterprise learned something that those of us who are close to this organization have known for some time, and that's that we have an extremely resilient, extremely innovative workforce who is able to work around short-term setbacks, such as those resulting from the damage of the earthquake, and continue to get the job done. And equally importantly, we reminded people of the fact that China Lake provides a better return on our customers' investment than any place else that they can go looking for the sort of capabilities that exist here. So they didn't have to appropriate money to rebuild the facilities that were destroyed. It was recognized by the entire defense enterprise that they get a better return on their investment, that a better product is produced, that the best, most efficient way to develop the technologies that are under development at China Lake is to rebuild capability that existed here rather than trying to take that work someplace else. One good example of that is the Developmental Test Squadron on base. There's an operational and developmental test squadron on base. The Developmental Test Squadron's hangar was effectively destroyed as a result of the earthquake. They are occupying a small corner of the hangar, but the entire hangar is going to have to be rebuilt. It's one of the largest single construction projects that are part of a series of 18 separate projects that Commander Benson is going to speak about in a few minutes. But just because they don't have a hangar doesn't mean that they have stopped delivering the products that the fleet relies upon from them for the next few years while we wait to rebuild that hangar. They were up and flying again a few weeks after the earthquakes had hit, and they are operating out of buildings that are dispersed across the airfield and other temporary facilities, providing the same sort of quality test and evaluation expertise to a host of different programs and customers that those customers were accustomed to before the earthquake struck. And the reason that I think that point is so significant is it's clear evidence of the fact that we are going to continue to draw new professionals, new college graduates, new scientists, new engineers, new logisticians. We're going to continue to draw more members of a very talented workforce to this part of the country. And the things that we can do to make Ridgecrest, to make China Lake even more appealing for the people who are excited to come here and work on these sort of programs, it's an investment that will certainly pay off in the long run. So I'm very excited to be here with you today. I'm excited for the opportunity to speak with you, and I'm really excited to be here at China Lake, where there are so many good things going on that we could take hours to speak about all of them. Hopefully the video gave you a little bit of a taste of that, and with that, I want to make sure that I allow time for my colleagues to speak. So thank you for your time.
All right, is it just me, or is blowing stuff up cool? This is awesome. I never get tired of those videos. I think that's why I became a Chemi. I think I've got like 2 minutes left to say good morning, so instead I'm just going to say good afternoon, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here representing our Navy Marine Corps team at NOC Weapons Division. And it's always especially meaningful for me because, needless to say, like everyone who works on the base, I'm not just a NOC WD person. I am a very proud member and citizen of Ridgecrest and the IWD community. Last night we had a speaker's reception and I was talking to Dave Ostash. Actually, we were having kind of a chuckle, which thankfully is now a good news story about one of my 4 kids, who I knew he would remember from Burroughs for a whole slew of reasons. But it's a good news story now. But she represents, in my family, 3rd generation who have graduated from Burroughs High School along with my other 3 kids. My mother-in-law actually graduated from Burroughs when it was where Murray had been located on the base. And I got 4 grandkids here who are all grade schoolers and middle schoolers here in our school district and in our public schools. So is this place important to me? You bet this place is important to me. I absolutely have a vested interest in our success in this community writ large, because when I say community, it's all of it. But that's not a unique story to me, and I know there's a lot of people in here who have that exact same story. A lot of families who have lived here and worked here for generations and stay here for a lot of good reasons. It's an amazing place to live. And that includes our workforce at China Lake. So, we all know this, but when we leave the base in the afternoon and we come home here. With very few exceptions, virtually everybody who works at China Lake lives in the Indian Wells Valley, and most of those folks live in the greater Ridgecrest area. So it matters to everybody. This is just a nudge. Now, I will say I had some prepared remarks. One of the things about being just about the last person to talk is others have said a lot of what I was going to say, but that's actually a good thing because that reminds me how cohesive we are and how aligned we are in our priorities and what matters for this place. So you've heard this, you've seen numbers, you've seen statistics. The NOC WD story today is a good news story, and I think you already know that, so that's not really a surprise right now. And I do want to foot stop. If there's ever been any question about whether or not China Lake is relevant to our national defense, I'm quite confident that question's been answered by $3 billion that's coming our way in an unprecedented fashion. I've talked to more people in the Pentagon who said, we wanted you to get this money, but no one possibly could imagine that amount of money would flow that quickly to any military installation, because we've got friends at Tyndall Air Force Base. They're not seeing that money flow yet. They were devastated from hurricanes. Cherry Point's still trying to come back. Other parts of the Marine Corps. So yes, I think this is the message to all of us that this is critical to national defense. So, you know, it was a horrible thing that happened. As Pastor said, it's a miracle that nothing worse happened. And so we're going to make sure that we all make the best of this opportunity that we've all been given. So I will give you a few facts and figures just so I can, you know, numbers are good. So, and we actually did see some of those, but for FY19, NOC Weapons Division, we were at just about $1.8 billion in new orders. That's our annual money coming in, and that was an increase from the year before. So that steady growth, as you've seen in all the charts, again, bottom line is demand for our capability, our services, our expertise just is not going away. We actually thought just after the earthquakes occurred that we would expect in this fiscal year, FY20, that we might see a drop in those new orders because we were a little bit crippled in terms of our capability and our capacity to get work done, but that's not what's happening. Our customers know we have some limitations. They also know that we're incredibly creative and innovative in finding workarounds, because at the end of the day, everybody cares about we got to get it done for the warfighter because they don't have time to sit around and wait for this. So the money's flowing. We're going to have another one of these big years. They recognize that it might take us a little longer to get some things done, but they also recognize there's nowhere else that has the unique capabilities that we have. So yet another strong year, and as we saw, there's more to come. A few more little facts. Our customer service agreements, which we call CSAs, and our cooperative research and development agreements, also known as CRADAs, those are opportunities where we work cooperatively with industry and in some cases academia. They come here to use very unique facilities and capabilities that they just cannot replicate out in industry. In 19, we had executed a total of 30 CSA actions. That's actually a lot. Worth about $27.5 million. 15 of those were new last year. We've got 20 active CRADAs right now. 3 of those were new in 19, and I've seen a number of them already coming across my desk for signature. So the earthquakes did not scare other people away either. They're still coming here to utilize and leverage our unique capabilities, and so more of those partnerships are continuing to develop and flourish. In 19, we saw the numbers. NOC Weapons Division wide, which is Point Mugu, China Lake combined, we ended up with 6,042 civilians, which again was an uptick from the year before. Across the whole of the command, we hired 639 folks. Most of those people are STEM, but not uniquely. We lost 625 to attrition, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. On China Lake specific, we hired 427 people and we lost 418, so very slight uptick. All those separations, we actually predicted ahead of the beginning of the fiscal year what we thought our attrition would be, and we actually came within less than 1% of our prediction. So we really understand the drivers for people who are leaving WD. In FY20, because we know that attrition is going to continue, we are going to continue aggressive hiring. We've already got all our recruiters are out now. This is the season when it gets really busy, where we are out at all the universities, at the campuses, setting up our booths and doing our recruiting. That's going to keep happening. It's exhausting for our hiring managers when you're hiring 600 to 700 people every single year. And as stated, it's a hot market. We are competing with all DoD, all industry, and the commercial sector for the same talent. Yet I will say, recruiting has not been our shortcoming. We do really unique work. Our challenge is retention. So I want to talk a little bit more about that and workforce attrition. So we have a large percentage of our workforce who within the next 2 to 5 years are retirement eligible. There was a big boom hiring in the 70s and the 80s, so that it kind of stands to reason we're at the other end of that right now. And the last week aside, the economy has been booming. Everybody's retirement accounts looked really good. They did great this past year plus. So people they've got their nest eggs. They have reached their financial goals and they're retiring, and that's just kind of a natural part of it, but we knew that. This is not a surprise to us. The flip side of that is like I said, we have aggressively been hiring for the last 7 years, particularly STEM graduates from universities all over the country. And as a result of that, more than 60% of our workforce has less than 10 years experience. Now that is really exciting, quite frankly, because I gotta tell you, the problem solving, the understanding of the digital environment and new ideas to solve existing problems, it's really cool to see what ideas and solutions are coming from the minds of our newest professionals. But we also know from 30 years of data, that is also the demographic where we lose the most people. The first 5 to 7 years, when new hires come here, we lose 50% of them. And there's a host of reasons. We do exit interviews, we have a wealth of data. You know, some of those are things that we really cannot control. Sometimes people realize after a few years they want to be closer to family. And if family is located elsewhere, they're going to move, they're going to find careers closer to family. Like I said, it is a hot market. Employers know how talented our folks are. They know that the first few years they're here, as with all the years they're here, quite frankly, that they've got their sleeves rolled up and they're learning how to do things that matter to industry. You don't come out of college being a rocket scientist. You come here and you learn how to be a rocket scientist by building. So they're coming in and they're cherry picking our folks. And we can't compete in terms of salary. So if you've got somebody with 2 to 3 years and industry comes in and they offer them 20 to 30% more, you know, we can't compete with that. We can only compete on mission. A lot of people will ignore the increase in money because there is a deep moral conviction for the mission and they stay. But there are things that we can affect. You know, it's the quality of life, it's quality of work life, and it's quality of life outside the gate. So we have been looking at that quite a bit. I won't say just looking at it, because looking at it is a very passive term. We have actually aggressively been, I would say, interviewing and getting a lot of feedback from all the folks we've hired in the last 5 to 7 years to say, what do we need to do to make your quality of life better here on the base? So we're actually right now going through a very aggressive revamping of what we've called our ESDP program. We need to accelerate applied learning. We need to get people to work quickly. We need to learn how to outpace our adversary, which, quite frankly, the U.S. hasn't been doing a real good job of that in the last handful of years. And these new professionals want to be contributing to mission. So we're taking their feedback, and we're hoping that the sooner somebody can get immersed in doing relevant, meaningful work where they see the work they're doing actually has a direct impact to a warfighter, that alignment to mission tends to get people to want to stay. But like I said, that's only half the equation. And the other half is, what's life like when you leave work and you go home? So I need everybody's help here. This is a team sport, we've got to do this all together. So Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? You get to the very bottom of the hierarchy of need. What do you need? Food and shelter. So one of the things that we continue to get a lot of feedback from our newer employees is living, places to live, specifically places to rent. They're pretty candid in their comments about how they feel in many cases about the quality of the dwellings that they are having to rent. When people come here out of college, they're not ready to buy. They want to be here for a handful of years and convince themselves that this is the place they want to stay, this is the place they want to live, this is the place they want to work, and then they become buyers. But those first handful of years are looking for places to rent. And I'm so glad to hear that there are projects that are getting ready to break ground and perhaps more in the pipeline, because that's, like I said, that's your bottom hierarchy of need. We've had people say, I love my job, but I really can't tolerate some of how life is. You know, I can't find a decent place to live. I've had young females who are single say, I don't feel safe where I live. So we've got a lot of opportunity here, and I'm so encouraged by everything that I've heard today, is that everybody, this entire community is rallying around what we do to posture ourselves for the 21st century. So that's my one ask, and I know you've heard that from me before. And I know the pressure on rental properties is not going to get easier, right? Because we talked about the massive influx of contractors coming in to rebuild the base. So, you know, I know it's a tremendous challenge for the community. And then again, I'm also glad to hear that there's going to be an uptick in homes, because we do have a lot of people who are staying after 5 to 7 years, and they're the folks who are ready to put their roots down here and buy a place, perhaps start a family, and become the people who are going to retire from here in 35 or 40 years. So the other one I know we've talked about too is, you know, social life entertainment. I will say a lot of meetings and conversations with our new professionals. They really know that we're a small community. They got attracted to this place because it's a small community. So they really don't have unreasonable expectations. They don't expect to see big malls and all the big brand restaurants. That's actually not even what they're looking for. But there's one comment that somebody shared with me about 4 or 5 years ago that stuck with me. And I thought this was great input. He said, you know, I came here, I love the smallness of this community. It's where I came from in another part of the country. He says, it's beautiful here. I'm an outdoor person. The Sierras are spectacular. We saw those pictures Scott had of sunrises and sunsets. And he says, but you know, there's nowhere in town where I can sit with friends and have a meal or a drink and just stare at those mountains. And that struck me as maybe those are the kind of things we can do as a small community. And again, my point to all this is there's no easy solutions, but we've got a lot of great feedback and signals from the people who we want to stay here for the next 30, 40 years, raise their families, and keep all those generations going here. So it is a team sport. I'll tell you from a NOC-WD perspective, we are all in, and we're all in because we are all members of this community, and it matters to everybody working on the base. I want to see this be the thriving 21st century city of Ridgecrest that really appeals to a 21st century culture, because that's where we're going. Great problem to have. And I will echo what you've heard from everybody else. I am exceedingly excited about the next 5 years for China Lake and the IWV. My gosh, these are amazing opportunities. We're going to continue to bring more folks into the community. We're going to hire because we need them. We have the unprecedented support. We are going to be better than ever, and I think that's going to continue to attract more people, especially in STEM careers. So I will turn over the time to Commander Benson. He's got more detail to talk about really what we are doing to rebuild and what is that going to mean. And I suspect you got a lot for folks who were at Industry Day. I think there was a lot of great information sharing that went on there. So again, I just want to thank you for your time. I want to thank everybody here for your continued commitment to this entire community. It was a tough year, and we're all incredibly resilient. And I think this is just the best example of taking lemons and making lemonade. And again, we are one team. So I am excited to be on the team. Thanks.
Thank you to Admiral Dillon and JJ for those that outlook. Next to the stage, we'll welcome Commander Peter Benson of the Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake. Arriving at NAS in July of 2018, he currently serves as the Public Works Officer. Since 2003, he has served our country in a variety of leadership roles with great distinction. Commander Benson.
Well, good morning. Captain Dale sends his regrets. Unfortunately, he's away on official business, and so we are stuck with Pete Benson to talk about the NAS and a little, some facts, I guess, about $3 million and kind of what that means to the base and to the community. So starting off, I just want to point out, if you want some more of the details on this, Mr. John Kersey's over here at one of the tables and has some brochures specifically to the economic impact that the base has to the community here. So we've seen several of these numbers float around, and they're vary slightly depending on how you pull your data or whatnot. But on the base, just over 5,000 employees, mostly civilian, as you can see, just over 600 military, and about 4,500 civilian. We do anticipate that this is going to increase, not just contractor staff, but specifically in my realm as an engineer overseeing the large construction efforts. There will be quite a few jobs growing on the base as well. So probably about 75 to 100 more jobs on top of what we've already hired in the past few months. And then the job stimulation that the base does off to the off base is just under 5,000 jobs. A few more figures here. So the payroll, 503 million, so 39 million to military personnel and about 460 civilian personnel. Industry output, just shy of 700 million. Installation spending, so O&M, operation and maintenance contracts, 350 million. We're going to dwarf that here in the next couple of years. And purchases about 6 million. Annual tax revenues, 36 million. And visitor days and off-base lodging, 156,000, estimated at $25 million. I would say that, I saw kind of some of those statistics on how the lodging was filled. I had a little bit different experience this past summer and into this fall as we tried to flow some folks up from San Diego and some of the other installations to help us out. The peak of it during the recovery portion, we had about 103 personnel that came up, all from tradesmen all the way up to engineers and contracted personnel to help inspect, and it was hard to find a hotel. So, all right, so I think what everybody is really interested in listening to is $3 billion in the earthquake recovery. So for me, as a public works officer, what I do is I oversee the facilities and infrastructure on the installation. And quite frankly, this is like the public works department's Super Bowl. Pretty awesome, right? So we get to pull out all the stops, red tape goes away, money is flowing, and we have the opportunity to do some really cool and innovative things in the realms of contracting and putting up some, quite frankly, world-class facilities that we're going to have now after the earthquake, from hangars to laboratory spaces to all types of very unique and specific operational facilities to make the cool explosions that we saw on the video earlier. All the way to some administrative facilities, gymnasiums, and some other community support type items. So with the earthquake recovery, you heard the $3 billion. I'm just going to give you kind of a slight breakdown, and this may vary a little bit depending on what the awards go to with the contracts, but this is kind of roughly the breakdown. So we got, for design and repair of existing facilities that aren't going to be replaced, we got just over $500 million. And that's going to be split between fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. The majority of it is going to be in fiscal year 20, so about $300 million of that, $350 will be spent by September 30th of this year. And then military construction, that's really the big one. So these are the facilities we're actually replacing wholesale facilities. So we have $1.2 billion for fiscal year 20. So you put those two together, you're talking kind of about $1.5 billion that we're going to have obligated by September 30th of this calendar year. That's a lot of money flowing into it. Here's a listing of a few of the facilities that we're going to do. So hangar 3 replacement, Admiral Dillon referred to that earlier, so that's VX-31's hangar. So we're going to put almost $1 billion at the South Airfield, for those of you who are from there. So a bunch of move from the east side of the airfield, we're going to move it down to the South Airfield. So we're going to do air traffic control tower and operations facility, a bunch of parking apron, utilities and infrastructure to the South Airfield, so that's the fairly underdeveloped section of the airfield, so a lot of that type of work. We're going to Michelson Lab, so a portion of that is split between FY20 and FY21 of what's being replaced. So we'll see one of those projects in FY20. Our magazines set kind of right in between the two epicenters, and they got quite a bit of damage to them. So there's 25 facilities associated just with that one project being replaced out there, magazines, and then kind of assembly storage, pre-engineered building will go out there as well. And then some of the community support facilities, so the chapel, the gym, also getting new of those on the installation. And then in FY21, we have another $1.2 billion. Most of that's, again, a few on the main side of the installation, and the rest of that out at like the Clip Salt Wells Skytop area. So I heard a lot with $3 billion, so I didn't round up. It's $2.9 billion is what we have planned for all that infrastructure. And then on top of that, there will be equipment purchases. You have not included in this is the temporary spaces that are being put up and such like that. So the real bill is a little bit larger than that. So what does that mean to the community, right? We have the first of our military construction projects. Those are the big, large ones. We have the first one. We've actually already had the site walk to replace the magazines. So a process when you do a military construction project usually takes 5 to 7 years from, hey, I got this great idea, I want a new building, to something is actually built. So July 4th to, I think it went on the street in January, we had the first contract out, appropriated, and we're getting proposals back. This is quite unprecedented in any type of thing I've seen in my 19 years of doing facilities for the United States Navy. So, hey, we award a contract, supposed to be awarded in April. That doesn't mean in May we're going to have this influx of 1,500 contractors showing up on site, right? All of these projects that we're doing are design-build type projects. So for those of you who are here at Industry Day that we held on the 25th of February, just earlier this week, you saw some of the acquisition strategy and stuff with that. What that means is we award the contract, and then there's this period where they design them. It's kind of like some 6 to 8 month period. So when do we really expect to see a lot of the construction start hitting? You're going to see a good uptick in the November, December of this year as these magazine project kicks off. And then it'll be like May, June time frame when we have the South Airfield. Again, just short of $1 billion at the South Airfield. That'll be awarded in September. You start to see a lot of the heavy earthwork and concrete work going in for the site preparations, starting in kind of like the May, June timeframe. So that's when we really see, May, June timeframe of 21. So that's when you're really going to see kind of the big influx of folks and materials show up to the base. We anticipate, kind of estimate now, and I emphasize estimate on this, is about 1,500 folks on the contracted side with these different contracts that we let. So one of the other things I want to point out, I get a lot of questions, so I'd like to see the Google poll on questions about earthquake recovery and how the funds are going to be appropriated and spent, because that's all the questions I get, so I don't know if it was Google, but Pete Benson questions. So a couple of things I want to point you to here. We've had 2 Industry Day meetings, one down in San Diego, the 18th of December, and then just recently this week, the 25th of February here in Ridgecrest. So we have a website, and I've got the address up here on the slides that you can go to, but kind of long. I know they'll be made available if somebody wants them. But really the easiest way to go to this page is if you just go to Google and you type China Lake Earthquake Recovery NAVFAC, the first hit is this page. So when you go on this page, we have from both of these Industry Day events, there's a question and answer period with it. They're a couple hours long, typically. And then what we do is we record all the questions, we record all the answers, we post those. Those who are interested in getting an opportunity to contract for some of this work, they're going to be going out to some pre-screened contracts that we already have. Other contractors are on kind of a short list. However, they need all kinds of subcontractors, right? They don't all self-perform all of their work. So here's an opportunity. We have a list of these contractors that are out there and which those jobs are. So, specifically you're looking at like Hangar 3 and stuff in the South Airfield, and that's going to the Global Contingency Construction Contract, right? So there's a list that has all those contractors on there, so you can reach out to them. That was really the emphasis of the event on the 25th, was to have some matchmaking opportunities for those here in local. I know some folks came from Bakersfield and down by Palmdale and such. But that was an opportunity to meet some of those contractors and kind of show some of your capabilities. So still, again, if you missed that or you want to continue that, the listing of those are out there as well. As well as all the presentations we have. So there's a nice slide that talks about some of the acquisition strategy and the timelines I was just talking about with the magazines and stuff out there. So, great time to be here at Ridgecrest, California. Professionally, for me, this has been one of the most exciting things I've ever been a part of. I don't offend anybody with that. With the earthquakes, I know it's quite a traumatic event, but just like I said before, it's like the Public Works Department Super Bowl, and I'm having a great time working with and being a part of this recovery. And really, we're going to have some world-class facilities when this is all said and done. Thank you.